cost. Everyone's talking about healthcare, but how much do you know? Better Health is brought to you in part by Sleep Better Northwest. Explore the healthcare system and listen to experts with your host, Sue Lonnie Madsen, here on Better Health.
Okay, well, welcome to this episode of Better Health. And I have two guests today to specifically talk about the Northwest Run Walk for Epilepsy 2017. And I'd like to welcome Pia Hallenberg.
Thank you.
And Ryan Ulrich.
Thank you.
And both of you are involved with this. Ryan, you're the chief fundraiser, and Pia, I believe you're going to be an MC.
I am. It's amazing. They handed me the keys to the event this year. I don't know.
And they're going to let you have a microphone.
We'll see what happens.
Okay.
We'll see what happens. No, I can do that. That's
well, the
smallest part.
The timely trigger for inviting you for the podcast is the walk, which is coming up on June 17th in Kendall Yards. And we'll give some more information later about how to find more information on that.
Great.
But this is a good opportunity to let people know a little bit more about epilepsy, what it means to live with epilepsy, and what it is. It really is one term for a whole lot of things that we get confused. So how would you like to kick that off, Ryan, with some information for people?
Sure. Well, first of all, I am a person who also lives with epilepsy, so this is something near and dear to my heart. And then I have worked in some fashion with the Epilepsy Foundation Northwest for over 10 years now. And so I've worked with a number of families in Spokane, done seizure response trainings, and really just our little epilepsy community has become kind of like family. Mm-hmm. So it's a wonderful group of people that just also happen to have a seizure disorder. And epilepsy is something that I think many times people don't realize it's as common as it is. It will affect 1 in 26 Americans, so that's a huge number of individuals. And it still has a lot of stigma around it, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that I definitely am trying to combat, as are many other folks, through education and through just sharing my story and information.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And I know, Pia, you've been very open about the fact that you live with epilepsy.
I do, yes, every day, unfortunately. Well, the one thing that I can do is I am fairly well functioning, as they say. That means that the drugs I take work. So I am not as affected as many other people are. That means, for instance, I can drive. I can keep a job. I don't have to worry about. I don't have to worry too much about traveling and things like that. And so years ago, I decided that if I can't do anything else, at least I can be very open about what it's like and what epilepsy is. So I do a lot of smaller presentations to community groups, churches, Lions clubs, Kiwanis, whatever, Rotary. I was just at Rotary across the street here, and more of an individual outreach type of thing. But I've also written about it in the Spokesman Review. I'm very open about it on my Facebook page. And I hope that I can help affect some of the stigma, because I don't necessarily think of myself as having a disability, and you can always ask me questions about what's going on or what it means. So that's my part of it.
I think in my own response as an EMT over the last 25 years, I've responded to a few calls that were for someone who was having an active occurrence of a seizure disorder, and mostly it's a matter of just keeping people safe and if there's someone with them who can say, well, this is what usually happens for them, and this is what we need to do, we'll take the cue from the family or friends who know the history.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that you would advise people to think about? Maybe let's back up a little bit. So, if I were trying to pick out a thinner, what would most people's stereotype of epilepsy be, and then how would you address that?
Sure. I still get questions. Should we put something in their mouth to keep them from swallowing their tongue? Or should we try to hold
Which is
them
at least
down?
a well-meaning question.
Sure. No, it's people that are wanting to respond, but also should we try to hold them down? Mm-hmm. And so those are, I think, two of the most common misconceptions that I get. And so to both of those questions is no, you should not put anything in their mouths, because then the risk is they will choke on that item or hurt themselves, cut their gums, etc. And then no, you want to protect that individual's head and try to avoid bruising, but you don't want to try to restrain them, because that can hurt you and that can also hurt them. So both of those are key points to make. And then 5 minutes is the magic number whenever I do seizure response trainings. is if the seizure has gone beyond 5 minutes, that's when you want to call for help, call paramedics. So 5 minutes is that magic number that we always try to educate people on. But that under that, folks are usually, the human body is an amazing thing. Folks can come out of seizures and come back and be just fine. It just takes a minute or two to come back out of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a good guideline right there. Is the don't hit the panic button until it's lasted for some time. And
no, and I would add to that it's also important. I believe it's important that that you are as frank as you can be with the people you work with, for instance, or with your friends. And I know that's very difficult for some people because again, there's a lot of stigma. It's a brain disorder. Up until not that long ago, it was considered a type of insanity, and so, or a mental health condition, which it's not. It is a brain disorder, and so I try to say, well, my thing is, when I come out of a seizure, I don't know what happened, and so the most important thing you can do to me is tell me that I had a seizure, because I have no clue. And it's a very uncomfortable situation that those first couple of minutes, sometimes 10 minutes, where I don't know where I am. I have no clue where I am. I don't know what happened. So that's one thing that I always say. And I also tell my friends and my coworkers that if something happens and they get scared, then it's okay to call 911. You know, if I have a seizure and they don't know what to do, or confusion breaks out, it's like, well, call 911, because, you know, that's why the EMTs are there, and that's why 911 is there. So I think that's an important point to get across too, that, you know, and don't hold people down. Don't stick something in their mouths. But
we usually recommend just move the hard furniture out of the way.
Yeah, move the furniture away.
Good.
Yep. I knocked over a bookcase one time. So yeah, it's a good idea to get the furniture out of the way if you can.
And I want to piggyback on something that Pia said, in that I know when I've had a seizure and I'm coming out of a seizure, it is a very frightening thing.
Yeah.
For a few, it feels like an eternity sometimes. It's really only a few seconds. You don't know who you are or where you are or what's going on. And I joke with my better half that would be the ideal moment to come in and tell me, Ryan, you are Superman and you're perfect. And that would be wonderful, because you don't remember anything you've done wrong.
No.
You could just start over on a fresh page. But you take a cue from the people around you when you're coming out of a seizure.
Yeah, you do.
So making sure that folks are calm and encouraging does a world of good, when it just is, you come out of that seizure in a safer space than if you see people panicking, and then that causes the individual having the seizure to panic and can cause a worse situation. So.
Well, as a responder, I'll tell you that that is one of the things that we're aware of, which is don't overload the room with too many people, and back off a little and give some space. And I can look in somebody's eyes as they're coming back, and it's like things are getting into focus slowly, and you can kind of see that it's coming back into focus, and just give a little time
Yeah.
mostly.
Yeah. It's also fairly common to be, for the person who has the seizure, to be very emotional or very upset right after the seizure is over. And initially, I thought my reaction was, frustration, fear. Why is this happening to me? But my neurologist assures me that it's actually, there's like a chemical hormonal reaction in your brain, and so it's not uncommon to be very emotional right after. And so that's another thing to let people know that that's simply part of having the seizure. Another thing, of course, is that there are many different kinds of seizures. Unfortunately, I have what's called, in the old days was called grand mal seizures. It's now called, what is it called?
Clonic-tonic.
Clonic-tonic, right? So they're very violent, and I pass out, and it can be quite an ordeal. It takes me a couple of days to get over a big one. But there are many different kinds of seizures. Some are just small staring spells. Some are seizures that you may not even be aware that you're having. Some people have language tics, like they'll laugh or they'll repeat themselves or something, and that kind of shows that there's something going on. So seizures are many, many different things.
Well, which would all be another good reason why you want to let your friends and family, close associates know, so that they can let you know that something's happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I run into folks all the time who feel like it's something they need to hide. And I always just try to talk them through that process of, well, how do you think your close friends and family would feel if you're not sharing this part of yourself, and how will that hinder your relationships with them? So really just realizing for your safety and also for theirs, you should share that information. Own your epilepsy. Make sure that you share that with folks who might witness you having a seizure so they can respond appropriately, and also so you don't freak them out, because that's not fair either.
Exactly.
Well, we're coming up to a break here. When we come back, we can talk a little bit more about the research, the work that the foundation is doing in Spokane, and go on from there.
Great, thank you.
In touch, online all the time. SpokaneTalksOnline.com.
Here's Rob Curley, editor of the Spokesman Review.
Living life is complicated. They should give you an instruction manual, but they don't. So every day I feel like I have to try to put together an instruction manual for how you would live in Eastern Washington. Sometimes that's big national news, sometimes it's local news, but sometimes it's just telling you where to get a good hamburger and why the Zag Zone really works this year.
Online, in print, the Spokesman Review. Subscribe to The Experience.
Snoring can disrupt marriages and cause serious health problems. Call Sleep Better Northwest first, the experts in dental sleep medicine. Their medically approved, custom-fit oral appliances will have both you and your partner sleeping better and being more productive throughout your day. Don't wait. Snoring and sleep apnea can signal potential strokes or heart attacks. For more information, visit needbettersleepnow.com and download our health guide today. Sleep Better Northwest, the experts in dental sleep medicine.
A special thank you to our friends at Tom Sawyer Country Coffee, the official coffee supplier here at Spokane Talks Online.
To help you be safe, Washington state law requires you to call 811 2 full business days before you plan, for example, to dig, drill, plow, pull from, or pound anything into the ground. Be prepared to provide the operator with the correct address, cross street, and the description of your work. You must mark the dig area with white paint. The operator will inform you of the utilities notified of your impending excavation. Wait for all their marks. Be safe and dig with care.
Okay, well, we're back, and I've just been checking out a few of the websites that are available. Of course, now we all go to WebMD and other kinds of websites when we want to find something out, right?
Dr. Google. Dr. Google knows everything.
Dr. Google, yeah, drives doctors crazy. But the Mayo says that epilepsy affects more than 2 million individuals in the U.S. alone. That's a significant number. I'm sure we all know people who have.
We do. I can promise you that. Every time I give a little presentation or talk to a group about it, I say, well, if you don't know somebody who has epilepsy, there's probably someone here who has epilepsy. Very rarely do people raise their hands. Quite often they come up to me after the presentation is over and share their stories. And the last group presentation I did, there was about maybe there was just 15 people, 16 people, and 3 of them came up and talked to me after I was done speaking. With various experiences, but they all had epilepsy or had epilepsy at some point in their life. So,
yeah, and you mentioned earlier that this is something that for some people it's a chronic, lifelong condition. For some, it's episodic. And is there some more information that you could share on that?
Well, the definition of epilepsy is someone that's had more than 2 seizures.
Yeah.
So for some folks, that can occur in a broad spectrum of situations. But I am just so thankful to live in this day and age, because medications have come so far, even in the last couple of decades. I look at the medications that I take, where I used to take 6 pills a day to now 2 pills a day, is a wonderful advancement. And the fact that so many of my friends now can live seizure-free just by finding that right balance of medication is wonderful. And for me, I can normally live seizure-free as long as I stay healthy, try not to stress myself out too much, and make sure that I'm taking that daily regimen of medication.
Yeah. Well, I know, Pia, you had mentioned travel, and one of the stresses of travel is just, you've suddenly changed time zones, and you try to figure out, let's see, it's every 12 hours I'm supposed to do this. What hour is it? And
I just I don't want to say I wing it because that sounds very bad, but I always take, I tend to fly to Europe a lot, so those are long flights, and I make sure I take my medication before I get on the plane. And then when I land, 14 hours later, I take another dose, even though it may not be soon enough, and it may be a little off. I'd rather take a little bit too much than a little bit too little for a couple of days.
And I'm sure everybody has to figure out what works best for them. It's going to be very individual.
Yep. It is. I had, when I was first diagnosed, and I was diagnosed I was 32 when I was diagnosed, so it's not like you have to be diagnosed as a child. I was
and that's actually a significant point. Is this could be diagnosed at any point in somebody's life?
Yeah, there's reason to believe that I always had epilepsy, and we just didn't notice because I tend to have seizures at night. And so, anyway, that's a long story. But I was on one kind of medication that I couldn't remember anything. I couldn't. Everything was like slow motion. Nothing worked, and I'm a fairly active person. I'm pretty bright, and I couldn't. Nothing worked. And so then, but there's many other medications to try, which is the point I'm trying to get across. So if you try something and you feel completely out of it, or you feel like it's not working, or you don't feel like yourself, or you get angry or whatever, go back to your doctor and say, I want to try something else, because there's several good medications out there that are very well researched. They all have side effects. And you just, hopefully it's possible to find a balance, I
think if you think of one of the side effects of not treating is seizures, and that's you have to put that into the mix too when you're looking at the return return on the investment,
absolutely.
So to speak.
And I have to also share that Pia just came from a boxing ring prior to this, so
Were you
Pia
boxing?
has not let
Just a little
this
bit.
stop her. She's pretty amazing.
No wonder you're a little tired this afternoon.
I am a little tired. No, I just hit the sandbag
duked
this
it out in the
morning,
ring.
but I was very, it's a conscious choice. People have said to me many times, how can you ride horses? Well, I can. Well, how can you go swimming? Because you can have a seizure and drown. I lived alone for a long time. How can you live alone? How can you do this? How can you do that? And after my initial frustration of not knowing why, because in my case, we don't know why. We just know that I have seizures. After that first year was over, I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to continue to do things the best way I can, because you never know if it changes. It can get a lot worse or it can get better. You never know. You can't know that. So if I spend 5 years being super overly careful and never taking a shower unsupervised, I'm the kind of person who would regret that. So I'm not saying you should be reckless. You should be careful. You should find a doctor to talk to, find some support. But I also think it's important to just, try to do some of the things that you always did. Yeah. Do you agree, or am I encouraging recklessness here?
No, I second in that. Yes, consult with your doctor. Always.
Yes, always.
But I went through a period in my life in college where I was very fearful that someone might see me have a seizure, and I just lived my life in fear and really restricted what type of activities I did, because I just was so afraid that somebody might find out or how it would affect me professionally, and I got tired of that very quickly and realized that was not the way that I wanted to live. Yeah. And then also, I think there is some of that for somebody living with epilepsy, that acknowledgement that it can be a serious thing. And so for me, I think part of what motivates me is, when I do have a seizure, it's a scary thing. It takes takes the wind out of my sails for a little bit, and I have to stop and rest and recoup. So for me, it adds extra motivation to make the most of every single day, to get as much done as I can and live life to the fullest I can, because there might be a limit on those days, and I think that's just realistic.
I recognize that, absolutely.
I kind of think that's something that I will hear as I continue interviews, but with those who live with some kind of a chronic condition of any kind that can affect your life if you let it. That's a pretty major choice right there, is are you going to let it, or are you going to live?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I think we all have good and bad moments, I'm sure. I mean, it's like I said, if I have a big seizure, it takes me about 2 days to, it just feels like I ran a marathon without practicing. And I need a good 48 hours to get over that. And I walk like a little old lady because everything hurts. And those moments, I question my sanity, of course, but I also know there's really not much I can do. I don't have any defined triggers. My seizures are not triggered by lights or sound or stress, work stress.
Which is the case for some people, but
Exactly.
again, everybody's different.
Exactly. And so in the beginning, you want to find that trigger, right? Because you think that if you find that one thing, then
you can just avoid it. Yeah.
which is, oversimplified thinking.
Right. Yeah.
But it makes you feel better. And I have never been able to really seriously identify a trigger. So I rarely go to the movies. I do feel uncomfortable in front of that big movie screen, but I don't know if that's just me or if it's if that's normal. I have no idea. So.
Well, just call that your trigger and enjoy movies at home.
Nobody will ask
Then you're
me.
all good. Then you're
No,
good.
I'm fine with lights and stuff. So I think that's good. I don't know of anything in my environment that really sets me off. And
okay, so it's really just looking to the healthcare system to help you find how you fine tune your body to work to its best.
Yeah.
Well, about that fine tuning, I'm assuming, maybe I'm assuming wrong, but I'm assuming that one of the things that the Epilepsy Foundation does is it helps fund or direct research.
Yes.
Okay, and so are there some turning to research for a bit? Is there a particular direction or some directions that you're aware of that you're particularly tracking or of interest to you?
There was an effort a couple years ago that I haven't. I know it hasn't. It's still in the development phase. But there was a fellow who worked for Microsoft who had a child who has epilepsy, who branched off and was working on a device with some neurologists that would be like a little stoplight that you'd carry with you, and that would tell you if it was red, you knew that you were in the danger zone, and limit your activities that day. But if you were green, you knew for that time period you were good to go.
Kind of predictive.
Yeah, and so for some folks that would be just amazing.
That would be incredible.
Because they would know, okay, it's green, I can do all of these things today, but it's red, I do need to take it easy.
Yeah.
So it'd be some a kind of confidence.
Yeah.
The kind that you were looking for. Gee, if I could just find that one trigger.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then the Epilepsy Foundation Northwest also, that's our local chapter of the Epilepsy Foundation, coordinates with the National Foundation and coordinates and works with a lot of large pharmaceutical companies to just try to take on top of all the new advances in research and new medication changes, and helps organize panels with folks to make sure that medication providers are aware of the side effects and that they understand how this affects somebody's life. And then we also do just a lot of education. Here locally, we have a wonderful camp called Camp Discovery that provides a free, quote-unquote, normalized camp experience for children who have epilepsy, which is amazing.
And their siblings?
And their siblings as well. Yep. And so that's really neat. And then I do a lot of seizure response trainings, schools, sometimes at businesses where someone who's just started who has epilepsy and is nervous about how their colleagues, employer might respond. So having me come in and educate and provide a quick training can be very helpful.
Yeah.
That would certainly be easier than doing it yourself if you were the new guy.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
I swallow it. I just suck it up and do it. But it is difficult sometimes, and also if you travel and you're with a group of people that you may spend the next week with, but you'll never see them again. If there's a good moment, I make sure that people know. Because I just don't want anybody to be surprised. I think another thing about research is there was some effort to get the NFL involved at one point. And that didn't quite work out. Worked out a little bit because football players have head injuries, and head injuries give you seizures. And I hate to sound like this, but good research takes money and awareness. And so my hope is that at some point the NFL or even the military, there's a lot of veterans who come back with severe head trauma and seizures. That somebody, one of those big hitting organizations, will get behind it and be like, okay, we're going to make this our cause. Sort of like, kind of like it happened with breast cancer, for instance. Everything is pink and during that month, whatever it is. And I really hope that we'll be able to get something like that. But that requires that we can talk about it.
Sure.
And and I call it epilepsy. I don't call it seizure disorders or fainting spells or.
I prefer being just straightforward about things too. Much easier that way. So we have just like a minute left, and I'm going to let you turn over to you to give a pitch for people to participate.
Great.
On June 17th.
Yes, June 17th is our epilepsy run walk. You can run, you can walk. It's in Kendall Yards. Go to www.nwrunwalk.org.
How far do you have to run or walk?
It's 1 or 3 mile walk options. We'll have a big purple running shoe at Bloomsday, just like we have every year for the last 6, to raise awareness about Bloomsday. They've been a wonderful partner. So you can find information about registering there as well.
You can show off your fingers
yes,
because you were
sewing
the purple shoe.
And I have Band-Aids all over my
Ryan
hands.
has sacrificed his fingers for cause.
To raise awareness about epilepsy. Yep, it's worth it.
That's
okay.
Great.
So there is the website, epilepsynorthwest.org.
Yep, great information.
And also the northwestrunwalk.org. And I'll have to see, we're kind of new at the getting our own stuff posted to the web, but I'll have to see if we can get a link to that.
We'd appreciate it.
Up on SpokaneTalksOnline.com.
That'd be great.
And I can see the producer nodding his head. So yes, we will get a link to that.
Okay.
Up there.
Is there a Facebook event?
Yes, we have a Facebook event.
Okay.
Too.
Okay.
We'll see what we can do to help you share
I'll
it.
make an effort to share that,
Great.
so people can link through that, because it is a little complicated. It's a great event. It's very family oriented. It's low pressure.
Of live music.
Live music,
a lot of fun.
And people go out for breakfast afterwards, and it's just
opportunity
really nice.
to talk to people and feel really accepted, I suppose.
Yeah, a beautiful view of the river. Come on out.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Better Health with Sulani Madsen is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com, which is solely responsible for its content. Better Health is brought to you in part by Sleep Better Northwest. Ask Sulani a question, recommend a guest or topic, and hear this program again online anytime at SpokaneTalksOnline.com. Cheers to better health, and thanks for listening.
Snoring can disrupt marriages and cause serious health problems. Call Sleep Better Northwest